Okay, I'm going to use my presentation as a segue to move into this here, this panel of DS providers and an organization who works with student veterans. And I'm going to let them begin by introducing who they are and what they do.
Hi, thank you for staying this long. My name is Alan Ford. Project coordinator for Rochester Institute of Technology's Veterans with Hearing Loss project. As a retired lieutenant with a hearing loss from the U.S. Army, I'm thrilled to be part of this, especially part of this panel today. What I can share with you will be more information about our target audience, and I'll leave that for that, and I'll save everything else for your questions later. Roy?
Hi, I'm Rory Stein, and I'm a disabilities coordinator at the Harvard Extension School.
And I'm Kathy X, and I'm the Director of Disability Support Services at Brown University.
Okay, the first question I have, what resources do you offer for serving student veterans, either on your campus or within your organization?
Well, this is going to be easy for me to address right away. Part of the reason, a little background history, I teach at one of 8 colleges at RIT, and that's the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. We provide support services and direct classroom instruction for deaf students enrolled in 2-year degree programs. RIT has approximately 1,200 deaf and hard of hearing students on campus. We serve maybe 50% of that at our college. Among the other 7 colleges are the other 700 students in graduate and bachelor degree programs who receive support services from NTID. And that means we provide interpreters, we provide note takers, we provide real-time captioning. We also provide counseling services. But a major thing that we provide is co-op placements. And you were talking about that earlier, how important it is. What do you do if you don't get a job after you graduate? I'm proud to say that 93% of the deaf and hard of hearing students that get a bachelor's degree are finding real jobs with really good companies immediately after graduation. If they're looking for work, we can place 93%. So I think that's a biggie for us.
The Harvard Extension School pretty much provides the same accommodations as for other students with disabilities, note-taking, extended time. But we also have a counseling service as well that works individually with veterans suffering from PTSD or other psychiatric issues. We have the benefit of being a pretty small portion of Harvard, and we're very inexpensive as well, although the drawback to that is we have some budget issues here and there. But overall, since we're small, we can provide a pretty high level of support, given the fact that we have a lot of personnel and they're very available to them.
All right, and at Brown, we have a fairly small population of student veterans. We do have a student group that's formed on the campus, and I think that's been one way we've actually been able to start to work with them more closely. That panel actually provided they had a panel of students provide a presentation on our campus as well, and we included a lot of the people in the list that Georgia indicated earlier, people from psych services, the academic support services, our dean of the college office, which are what we consider our sort of academic deans that support students, student services, which is where the Office of Disability Services is housed. Our staff was present, all trying to make sure that we had a chance to, hear more firsthand information from students, because many of us have not worked with them directly. In fact, the DSS office at Brown has really had one student registered who's identified himself as being a veteran and having needs, that related perhaps more specifically to being a veteran than it might be, for some students. Again, he presented with PTSD, which we do have other students using services. So again, we've provided comparable accommodations to him that other students have received.
Okay, the next question. Thank you. What type of outreach do you engage in to let student veterans know you exist and to provide them with information on how they might access your services?
Well, like I said, the Veterans with Hearing Loss Project targets a very, very small population of veterans that are coming back into higher ed. And that is these veterans that were hearing, and then suddenly, for whatever reasons, they've lost their hearing, or part of it, most of it. They're still a hearing person. They can't hear now. That was my personal situation 29 years ago. Ironically, the VA health system rated me at 10% disabled, and excuse me, the Army retired me 100% disabled, service connected. So like many of these vets coming back, they have to deal with the VA system, they have to deal with this, just transitioning back to a point where they're ready for higher ed. So to answer your question, what are we doing to target these vets? I'm interested in finding out where the vets are going to school when they are ready to transition back into a normal life, quote unquote. And what I'm finding is, and your statistics support this, is they're going to community colleges. So my efforts are to get the word out to community colleges. You've got a vet with a hearing loss in a 2-year degree program. Great. What are they going to do after that? Can you provide co-op placements? Are they finding jobs? If they're not, and they're ready for a graduate degree or a bachelor's degree, tell them to talk to us. We're willing to talk with them. The thing I like about our program is we're not competing with universities or colleges. We're going after a different audience. My primary goal is when I talk to disability service providers at community colleges or conferences, I tell them, this is just another tool for you to have available. If RIT is a right fit because the programs match the goals of the deaf veteran, recommend them to check it out. If your vets are just in a 2-year institution to kill time, and a lot of disability service providers on community colleges are telling me that's what they're doing. They don't know what they want to do. They're not sure they want to go to work. They don't have the confidence to go to work. So it's like a holding tank. You know, we are an option and we have the experience, and I think that's a big selling point.
The outreach at the Harvard Extension School comes through directly through disability services, and we don't have a big population right now of veterans, but what I'm doing with that is similar to what I did at the BAC, which is creating a support group for them. I think it's really helpful to have 4 or 5 of them come together every once in a while and just discuss the issues that veterans face in general. I had one student come to me and say that he was very new, very young, and had problems with just the basic reacclimating from military life into civilian life. He was saying, you know, it's amazing how you can go from for a few years of just having everything sort of laid out for you in the sense that your day is planned and you're told what to do, when to do, and when and how to do it. You're discharged, and then all of a sudden you're responsible for everything. You have this freedom, but in a way it's almost a little bit debilitating because you don't have sort of a schedule, and they don't really have the organizational capacity as well. So I think having a mentor, as Georgia mentioned before, is extremely important to new students just entering into post-secondary ed.
And I think in terms of outreach, I mean, we talked, Georgia and I, a little bit before the presentation about the fact that since we haven't worked with a lot of students, a lot of the systems that we've been using to reach students are the ones we currently use to reach veterans. We do send a mailing and now actually do many of these things electronically, but basically it's information sent out to any accepted student, and that would be first-time students that would come in directly from high school, and resumed undergraduate education students, which is what it's much more likely a student who's using the GI Bill or is a veteran they'd be more likely to join us at that point. And they basically get information about how to reach our office if they need any services. And we also share this information with a lot of these other people we partner with to provide services and support to students. We try to educate faculty about the needs students may present in their classrooms, sometimes even if they're not asking for something, how to sort of watch for, and then try to refer students that you think may need some assistance, beyond just what the professor could provide themselves in office hours. And we also have a mentoring organization within the DSS office of students that have disabilities, and we do try to connect them with people with similar situations. So I envision that that's another mechanism we may use in the future as we see more veterans to try to help connect them to one another, as well as, again, be mentored for other types of areas of support. We match students sometimes if they prefer to be matched with someone with a similar type of disability. Similar to what was discussed by the panel, we've had a lot of students with Asperger's, for example, that do want to connect with other students that are managing some of the same concerns on the campus. And so again, those the double connection of also being a veteran may be another really great way to facilitate that mentorship working.
Excellent. Thank you very much. What do you feel works for your institution with regard to serving student veterans?
Wow. As I mentioned before, I think the co-op program is so strong. International placements. I think that's huge. It's really huge. One thing that I think that also sets us apart is institute-wide, we value diversity and we embrace inclusion. Faculty at the other 7 colleges have been working with students with a hearing loss in their classrooms for almost 40 years. It's not a big deal. Being labeled disabled, it's not an issue anymore. It's just a non-issue on our campus. Students are very aware on the first day of class, if they have a learning disability, it's their responsibility to get the proper paperwork so that the instructors can do whatever the reasonable accommodation is. So I just think the culture that we provide is just so friendly, user-friendly, if you will.
I like the use of the word culture there as far as a way of supporting veterans who are students with disabilities, because we rely on faculty members, as you mentioned as well, because oftentimes, as was mentioned also before, students or veterans are reluctant to seek the resources that are available to them, but they may sometimes go to a faculty member or instructor and mention something, and so we rely heavily on instructors to inform us as well. So an outreach initiative to instructors, I think, is really important in the form of PowerPoint slides, whatever works. But I think that helps a lot.
And I think one of Brown's strengths in terms of being able to serve the population that we may be seeing coming is that we have a pretty non-traditional curriculum. So it does allow people to transfer pretty effectively. It's actually a little bit easier to get in if you're a transfer student or a resumed undergraduate student, because we don't have the same numbers of people applying at that point that we see when we have first-year students competing with 10,000 or 20,000 applications. So I think part of our job will be to make sure we educate people in terms of knowing that there is the possibility of getting in, and I think further the curriculum's flexibility really does lend itself to someone who may be a more focused, adult learner. We don't have a general ed curriculum that you have to cover absolutely everything. So for people with strengths and weaknesses, or that maybe just adjusting to a new area of disability, they can sort of pick and choose coursework in a way that works for them as they're building confidence and skills. We also do enable students that want to go part-time as a resumed undergraduate, so it's not that you have to come as a full-time student. That may or may not work for someone with a family and other responsibilities. And then we also do reduce students' course loads. We have a lot of flexibility within our office to see what a student's particular, full-time load for that semester would look like. And so, I think that's another thing that can be really helpful, so students know that if they have a particularly challenging semester, course load can be adjusted to make sure that they have a manageable load and can be successful.
Very good, thank you. Okay, the last question I have, how has working with student veterans helped you in your work with all students with disabilities? Has it enhanced it, and if so, how?
It's kind of a trick question. I say that because I'm aware that at RIT there are approximately 300 veterans on campus. Because I teach at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, my students are deaf. I do not work with any veterans where I teach. I don't. Because we started promoting this project late in spring of this year, we've had no application. So part of it is we are in our infancy with spreading the word on this. And we expect to enroll our first student this next year, fall of 2010. So if you have any students, please, if they're interested, see me afterwards. Thank you.
I would say it's taught me more about different types of disabilities, post-traumatic stress disorder probably being the most prevalent, and how to accommodate those, TBI as well. I didn't have too many students before that, except for a few veterans that have come in the past few semesters with those types of disabilities, so I think it's broadened my knowledge of those types of disabilities.
And I think we haven't really worked with a large enough population for me to say that there's been a significant impact in terms of changing our perspective. I think it has been helpful to have worked with the veteran panel and to have heard the information today, and I'll certainly take that back to Brown and try to work on some of the things George has suggested in terms of becoming better connected to the different facilities that we have on the campus that will serve veterans so we can get the word out. So I think at this point we're really still in such the early stages of this that it's hard to really say that there's been a big change or a certain perspective. I mean, we're really hoping to gain that, I think, from, this point working forward.
Very good, thank you. We would like to now open up questions to everyone on the floor, so if you have any questions, raise your hand. There was a list of questions that was put out, perhaps on the table that you can pull from. Does anyone have any questions for the panelists? Does anyone have questions for any of us?
My question is pretty basic. On your campus, is the veterans programs or whichever veterans programs you're putting together, will they be in a combined area? Will it be easy for the veterans to be able to find it? Second part of my question is, on your website, if your veterans are even thinking of coming to your school, is it easy to find the information? Is there a one-click button that would allow them to get the informational services on your website?
I'm happy to answer that one. Gene Clark is our Veterans Enrollment Director. He is in personal contact with every single veteran we have on campus. They have to go through his office. He is the certifying agent on campus as well. As a Vietnam vet, he's 30 years experience working with the VA system. Great guy. The other thing I want to add to that, as far as the web pages go, RIT itself, on their homepage, they do have a link to veterans services. The veterans with hearing loss. We have our own web page, and after we're done with this panel, I will be hanging around. This flyer is a fact sheet. I have a number of these I'd like to pass out if you're interested in it. I also have a DVD that talks a little more in depth about things I haven't had a chance to and don't have time for today to talk about. But there is a link to support services specifically for veterans with a hearing loss. So it's definitely available and it's easy to get to. Thank you.
We're more web-based. We're pretty much one click away from the first page of the website under resources. So we found so far that the veterans have, if they're looking for the resources, they can find it pretty easily.
Well, and I think that probably just hearing your comments is helpful to me in terms of carrying back information that would be good in terms of helping us to design good services, because I think we're still in the early stages of providing this, and knowing that making it really simple and straightforward is going to be essential is one of the things I'm certainly going to carry back.
Just to let you know, even here on campus, they're working to make sure that it's easily accessible. Veterans aren't going to go searching for the information. If it's not on the first page, they're not going to go looking for it 9 times out of 10. Why bother if it's not there? Quite sure that there's a school that has a website. It's got a button on the first page. They click it, it goes, they're done. And I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this. One of the oldest sayings we have is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, because we're not going to go searching.
Can I add a comment about support services? Yes. One of the things I think is important is to know that in terms of best practices, I think is critical that veterans programs coordinate with the existing support agencies that are out there. For example, part of my job, and I don't know how to do this job, it's on-the-job training, but we have established strategic partnerships with Military One Source, IAVA, Wounded Warriors, a variety of these other organizations like that. In addition, we're working with Sprint CapTel to set up a PSA, public service announcement, again, targeting our audience. But the idea is that on our webpage, if a vet is interested, they will find links to these other resources. So we try and keep it simple and accessible.
Are there any other questions from the audience over here?
Thanks. I'm from AHEAD, the central office, but I work here in Boston. But you probably think I'm obsessed with documentation because I asked that of Gus. But I just from my own research, I know that I've been looking at the VA web pages and different things, and understanding that documentation that we might see that we're used to might look very different from the kind of documentation we get from the VA. And I wondered if you could address that, or what we might be, if a student comes to our office and is a veteran and brings documentation, how that might differ from what we're used to seeing, like a neuropsych or some other kind of medical form.
I'll speak directly on that. Actually, I only have one student veteran on my campus, and actually I was provided a psychoeducational evaluation, so mine did come through like that. What I did find with my veteran is when all the assistive technology that would have been useful for my veteran, he was never trained on it at all, never given any information. It was almost like he went through this program of recovery while he was in the hospital, and afterwards that helped him to adapt to his general life. But I'm wondering, did they miss a component that maybe this individual would go on to college? And he's actually what I would consider, and I think he's been considered, the VA poster boy, because at one time he was in a coma. And I can speak a lot about him in the sense that there is a book that has an entire chapter that's written on him. And this particular documentation that came in didn't have anything like that. So really what I did, luckily, I'm going to be real honest, this is where PA Cares came in. When I was involved with PA Cares originally, I didn't have any veterans. And I am a small private liberal arts, I'm at a small private liberal arts institution. I never anticipated, most of our students, in fact, almost 99% of them are traditional students coming right out of high school. I never expected to see any student veteran. So I was like shocked when I found out that we were getting this student. And what was helpful to me, and this is why I really advocate for outreach, get out there and collaborate with these gather as much information as you can, because that was the information that helped me when I read this individual's documentation, that I knew what to look for, I knew how to help them. And also, if I would not have had the appropriate documentation, I would have known the steps to go, where to refer the student, which would be vocational, through the VA. And he would go back and through vocational services get information from them or some sort of doctor report. Does that help? Actually, and I can tell you too, if you want a little bit more specific information, the book that I talked about that's on that mentor-to-mentor or veteran-to-veteran mentor form, if you go in that book, that tells you, it talks about documenting for employment purposes, for educational purposes, and it also has a list of resources in there. The book's an excellent guide, so that is something that you could have in your office and refer back to if you need assistance in that area. I think also, too, some of you may have picked up this brochure, and there should be, depending on the state you're from, there should be information on the back, and there's some excellent resources on there as well, people to contact, departments to contact if you have questions, or go onto their website and take a look, and there may be information about that as well. Any other questions from the audience?
Thank you. That was a very informative session. My name is Van, and I work at the William Joyner Center here, which has traditionally done work with Vietnam veterans, and now with the continuing wars that the U.S. is involved with. I just found particularly interesting the comment about peer groups and coming together that way, and that's something that we've tried to do here, is to have a focus group. And I was just wondering if you could possibly talk more about that and your experiences with that and how you might think it might support student veterans. And as well, the idea of traditionally people have come to the U.S. also from conflict zones, whether they have been veterans or soldiers in their own countries or experienced war as refugees or as citizens affected by war. And I was wondering if there was any idea about how these two groups might come together and learn from each other and that way build up rapport that way. Thank you.
Excellent question. Roy, do you want to talk about that a little bit? You talked about your support group on campus.
Sure, yeah, I can address the first part. The BAC, the Boston Architectural College, was a very small school, so I was kind of lucky because the students sort of knew each other. They met at an orientation, and actually we included that part as part of our orientation in the future. We requested that veterans meet in a certain location at a certain point of the orientation, and that turned out to be a relatively popular thing. And I think it's great to have someone who has been through post-secondary for a few years to act as sort of the leader of the group, because then they can inform the new students what the obstacles are and how he or she overcame them. And luckily, the leader was a star student who had a 3.7 GPA and disabilities as well. So it does take a little luck to find the right mentor as well. But I think just knowing that these students aren't they're not alone, and they're not facing everything, alone, that there's others going through the exact same thing. And it even leads to study groups if they're in the same classes and everything. So it branches off into different directions as well.
Very good, thank you.